Now is not the time to be passive anymore. Now is the time for you to actually take control of your financial and economic future and your family's future, more importantly, especially if you have children or you're caring for elderly relatives. You really need to start preparing now for a number of these things that are going on. Then I noticed in our private community, a lot of people were saying they've been going to the banks, not just in the UK, this is USA, Canada, Australia, Germany, France. We have people from all over the world. People are saying they've been trying to cash checks or withdraw large amounts of money. And again, we're not talking huge amounts. Sometimes it's as low as 3,000 or 4,000. And the banks have said that they have to come back in 5 or 6 days. They have to book an appointment to get this cash. This again is giving me some sort of red flags, warning signals at the moment. We're also seeing a number of banks for no reason that are saying they're closed on certain days for admin days. If you've watched my Great Depression series, you'll see there's a pattern here. There's a correlation to what was happening during the 1930s Great Depression. So I personally, again, this is my warning to all of you, I don't keep cash in the bank. So what happened, what triggered this was I wanted to buy cryptocurrency. And you'll notice a lot of these triggers at the moment where accounts are getting frozen are from cryptocurrency. And again, don't take my word for it. Try it yourself or ask anyone who's been buying crypto recently. And what you'll notice is the banks are stopping the withdrawals or the transfers, and then they're putting freezes on your account in some cases. But I do have a sneaky suspicion that a lot of the banks don't want you to be withdrawing or transferring your fiat money into cryptocurrency, because we're seeing this mass exodus from fiat into cryptocurrency. So I do have a suspicion that that is part of what's going on here. So I think this is a really nice transition into job losses and unemployment right now, because it's pretty obvious what's happening. Hotels and all these other businesses, they are laying off staff at a rapid rate. And I personally don't agree with what's being said on the news or with the government that employment is going to improve and the jobs are going to come back and we're going to have this big recovery. I think it's lies. I just don't, I can't, from a financial or an economic point of view, I'm just using all the models that exist and I'm looking at history and I'm correlating those models. It doesn't make any sense. So this is why I'm saying a lot of this is propaganda. It's not truth, because it simply doesn't make sense that employment would improve whilst businesses are collapsing. Where are these new jobs going to come from? I can't see where they would come from. And of course, when people can't pay their bills because they haven't got a job, how are they going to pay their mortgage? How are they going to pay their rent? How are they going to buy food, come to think of it? How are they going to do any of these other things? See, the government is giving stimulus to people. So let's use the US for the example. So the government gave the stimulus check, and then there's another small, $600 stimulus check, which isn't really going to go very far at all. The purpose of this, and this is very interesting, is to create an increase in the velocity of money. But what happened was, and you'll check this out if you don't believe me, the first one was a check. So what people did with it was they put it into Robinhood and crypto and all this sort of thing. Not everyone, but a number of people did this, right? So the second time around, what happened was the government didn't just give checks. This time they gave preloaded debit cards. Very interesting. Why did they do that? Because they didn't want people to go out and buy stocks and shares and cryptocurrencies and things like that, or precious metals. They wanted people to actually take this card and spend it in the economy, because this increases the velocity of money. So if you don't know what the velocity of money is, I'll just explain briefly. Let's say again that you have that $1,000 or pounds that we gave the example of, and you go out and you spend that in the economy. Well, when you spend it, someone else receives it, and there's a transaction there that the government can tax. So that's a 1 in terms of velocity. When that person then takes the money and they spend it, there's another transaction, so another tax. The government receives tax revenue. Now the velocity is 2. And they want this to keep going around and round and round, because it increases the velocity of money. It helps to pay taxes to the government, things like that. When you take that check and you buy cryptocurrency, for example, with it, or something else, let's say instead you use it to pay off debt, what this does is it creates deflation, not inflation, which is what they want. It creates deflation, because you've just destroyed some of the currency or some of the money that already exists in the economy by paying off debt. And they don't want that. But just to tell you what my biggest concern is with the stimulus, all of this new currency printing or creation, because they're not printing, but all this new currency creation, my biggest concern is what happens 12 months or sometimes 18 months later on, is that the inflation kicks in. So all this currency that's gone into the top levels and filters its way down, it ends up in food prices. It ends up in other prices, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. This is where it all goes. So if you add, let's say 25% to your currency supply, you're going to get an increase here in the price of goods and services. And this is a problem for you because this is going to exist against a decrease in wages as time goes by. So it's pretty obvious what's going to happen. Your standard of living is going to reduce against the backdrop of these problems. The other thing that really concerns me with all this stimulus going in is that if you look at who owns the bulk of mortgages now, especially in the United States, it's the Federal Reserve. And the reason this has occurred is because they, again, check this out. The Federal Reserve so they are the starting point. They're the ones that create currency. So they're the start of the monetary supply. They create the currency. They then do swaps with, treasuries or whatever else. So what happens, let's use the banks as an example, commercial banks. So the Federal Reserve will do a swap with the commercial bank. So the commercial bank then gets a new credit line and the Federal Reserve gets the bad debts. But of course, they don't want most of these bad debts. What they want is the MBS, mortgage-backed securities. So who owns the most mortgages in the United States now? It's the Federal Reserve, an institution which is neither federal nor a reserve. It's a private institution owned by shareholders. So this is a thing that really concerns me right now because this plays in to a lot of the more controversial videos that I have made and the Great Reset and some of these other things. So this is one of my biggest concerns at the moment as to why exactly this is going on and why it's being permitted.